What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hoopers Lounge podcast with Max and myself. We just posted an NFL video yesterday, but the NBA was so eventful yesterday that we had to come back with another video. That's right, two videos in a week. We are blessing you guys on your YouTube feed right now. But the NBA was filled with news yesterday, from blockbuster trades to tons of game-winning shots from players and teams around the league. And we'll start with the biggest news that came out yesterday. That was Trae Young's Atlanta Hawks career coming to an end after he was traded to the Washington Wizards. The Hawks, in return, got CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. And I think it was only those two players. There were no draft picks involved, if I'm correct. Yeah, so it was just a 2-for-1 player swap between two Eastern Conference division rivals, the Hawks and the Wizards. I, for one, am surprised to see Trae request to go to the Wizards. Max, I want to know what you think of this from Trae's perspective, and I want to know, what team do you think emerged better from this trade?
Um, yeah, so from Trae's perspective, I was a little shocked as well to see him want to go to Washington, but it kind of fits his MO of wanting to be the best player on his team. I think a player of his caliber definitely could have gone to a better school than Oklahoma in college, but he wanted to be the best player there. In Atlanta, his whole career up until this year, he was undoubtedly the best player on their team. Um, and when they got a player similar of his caliber in DeJounte Murray, we saw that didn't work out. Now, when a rising star like Jalen Johnson starts to dominate the league and absolutely ball out, we saw how that worked out. So I'm glad the Hawks moved on from Trae Young. It was time. It was a necessary move to be made. Unfortunately, though, I think the Wizards are the better team coming out of the trade, just based on what I'm looking at here. I think giving up no draft picks is a massive win for Washington. I was very surprised that they didn't have to give up at least like a second round pick in this deal. So I think if you get a proven all-star talent like Trae Young and you get to keep all your draft picks, I feel like that is a win-win almost for a team like Washington that, again, this year is probably already lost based on the start they've had, but the future of Washington, I think, is a little more exciting than we anticipated, 3 days ago. So I still think Atlanta's the better team, obviously, right now, but in terms of the trade, I think giving up no picks is what is swaying me into Washington's favor. What do you think about the trade?
Yeah, completely agree with you about the no picks. I thought a player of Trae Young's caliber would have at least one first round pick. And I know the Hawks have been kind of throwing out Trae Young's name in the trade rumor mill, and there were multiple reports coming out this season that the market for Young was robust and they didn't have many options. But and then they probably lost all the leverage that the Hawks had when Young publicly requested a trade. But even still, I mean, Young is a multiple-time All-Star who carried the Hawks to an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. And like that's a player that can help your team win. And for the Wizards to get them without even giving up a single draft pick, yeah, you take that anytime. And not just that, you only gave up CJ McCollum, a player who was never a part of your long-term plans, who you were probably going to ship away after this season anyways, and Corey Kispert, a lottery pick who has not lived up to expectations as a lottery pick, safe to say. If you're the Wizards, you didn't give up very much at all. Like, your entire long-term core is still intact. All of your draft picks in the future are intact, and you added an all-star point guard to help develop and coach and mentor your young talent. Great move on the side of the Washington Wizards in terms of not having to give up any key aspects of their future. The Hawks, they're going to benefit in the short term for this. The big knock on Trae Young throughout his career was his inability to play off the ball or play with a secondary star. Like you said, we saw him struggle to succeed with DeJounte Murray, and again this year he was not doing well when Atlanta handed the reins to Jalen Johnson. Trae Young is not a player that can succeed off the ball. He needs to be the system of an offense. That's not necessarily a bad thing because he's shown he can succeed. But I don't think Trae Young is going to ever be the best player on a championship-winning team. And that is the knock on him. And he's never going to be the second option on a championship-winning team because that's not his game. And the Atlanta Hawks have given the keys to Jalen Johnson. They want to build a team around him to support him. CJ McCollum is a great, he's been a second scoring option his entire career, basically, alongside Dame with the Blazers. And then Corey Kispert, he can make open corner threes. Perfect for Jalen Johnson. They're building the pieces around him, and this should be helpful for the Hawks in the short term on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. I understand why the Hawks made this move because, like I said, it was time for Trae Young to leave Atlanta. Just the drama surrounding his name and the tenure there, it was time to move him out the door. But I think they're in a couple years, they're going to be looking back and thinking to themselves, we could have got a lot more for a guy like Trae Young.
Agreed.
And that's where I kind of draw the line where, yes, you needed to make this move. It was time for Trae Young and the Hawks to part ways. But at some point, you also have to get what is worth, he is worth. And I feel like the Wizards, I don't want to say fleeced because CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert are nothing special at this point in their careers, but it just feels like the Hawks were undervaluing Trae Young just a little bit here, and they were willing to, they prioritized, like you said, the short-term success of the Hawks, and they wanted to get rid of the drama as opposed to maximizing the best deal they could have got for Trae Young. So, like we talked about this recently, we figured Trae would go to a team that's not contending. No really great team in the NBA right now needs a guy like Trae Young, so him going to Washington is not surprising in that department. I'm interested to see what the other teams were in talks with Trae Young. I know that stuff tends to leak out, weeks after trades, so that'll be interesting to see and kind of fantasize about what would have happened if Trae went different places, but the trade on paper to me looks pretty even, but I give the nod to Washington by keeping their draft picks. I think that's just the cherry on top, really.
Yeah, one last thing I want to say about the trade is that Atlanta, like I said, probably lost any leverage that they had in negotiations with Trae Young when he publicly requested a trade. And I also don't know his contract situation in terms of when he'll be a free agent. So if he's not under a long-term contract, the Hawks had basically no leverage. And this was probably the best offer they could have gotten. But I refuse to believe that before Trae Young went public with his trade request, that the Hawks were not offered a first-round pick from any other NBA team. They had to have gotten a better package earlier in the year that they passed up, hoping they'll get something better just to end up with this. Now, like I said, I think CJ McCollum and Kispert will help the team this year. I don't think they're going to help the team win a championship, but they'll help them get a higher seed in the Eastern Conference if that's the Hawks' goal. But it just, like you said, it feels like Trae Young was severely undervalued in the Hawks accepting this trade. And they weren't really looking out for their future because I feel like they could have gotten a lot more for a all-star caliber player like Trae Young, who's not even 30 years old yet. Anything else you want to mention about Trae Young?
No, I was just, the one thing I wanted to ask you was, if you were a Wizards fan, would you be excited about this deal, or would you kind of think of this as a short-term bridge player to eventually trade away in maybe 2 seasons?
Okay, that bridge player, yes, I do foresee Trae Young's Wizards career going something like that. However, in the short term, the Wizards have sucked since 2020. Ever since trading away Bradley Beal and losing John Wall after he went down with injuries. The Wizards have been like a bottom 5 team in the NBA year in and year out. They have not had an all-star since Bradley Beal. So Trae Young gives you an all-star caliber player. So that's going to make your team more exciting to watch as just first and foremost. As a fan, you're going to love that. But Young is also going to be a great mentor for Washington's young guards. Keyshawn George, A.J. Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, and I'm sure Bob Carrington, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple more. But Young is going to be a great mentor and help those guys further their development in the NBA. So if I was a Washington fan, yes, I have multiple reasons to be excited by this. And like you said, the cherry on top, no draft picks given away. That is just picturesque if I was a Wizards fan right now.
Yeah, the one player you didn't mention that I think Trae will have the biggest impact on is Alex Sarr. I think he could really benefit from this move. And it'll be interesting to see how their dynamic works throughout the rest of the season and into next year, because I anticipate Trae Young being on the Wizards for at least one full season, which would be next year. So, yeah. Exciting stuff. Our first blockbuster trade of the year. I think there will be a couple more. I know we have reports about Giannis that we'll get to here in a minute, and let's just transition right there. So I know Alex saw something just a little bit ago today about Giannis. So Alex, give us the scoop on the Finals MVP.
Yeah, so ever since Giannis won the championship with the Bucks, every single year, 2022 through 2026, one of the biggest storylines surrounding Giannis is is he going to request out of Milwaukee? When is he going to request that trade? When is he going to move to another team? Every single year, it is talked about as an inevitability. Yet, just about an hour ago, Giannis shut down any and all trade discussions, saying that requesting a trade is not in his nature, and he's not the type of player to do that. He's going to remain in Milwaukee until he retires or Milwaukee decides that they don't want him anymore, which I don't see why they ever would do that. But that is what I was saying every time that we talked about a potential Giannis trade. All the noise surrounding Giannis and a potential trade has been media driven. It has never come from anything Giannis has said or done himself. He has always remained loyal and committed to Milwaukee when he was asked about it. The words "I want to trade" were never once uttered by Giannis. And I did fall for the media bait the first couple of years in 2022 and 2023, especially that 2023 when they lost in the first round of the playoffs. After he wasn't traded then, I was like, okay, he's going to stay a Buck. And even in 2024, 2025, in the first week or so of this year, when his name has been thrown around in trade rumors, I had a feeling he wasn't ever going to be traded because he's never once said he wants out. And now he's officially shut down all talks, remaining committed to being a Milwaukee Buck despite the Bucks being in the midst of their worst season since 2015, a decade ago. He's still committed to the team. So Giannis, my favorite player in the NBA, my GOAT, loyal king, will have his jersey hanging up in the Raptors in Milwaukee. And I truly hope he stays his entire career with the Bucks because players starting for one team throughout a career is becoming more and more rare. Curry is the one guy that comes to mind, and Giannis is approaching that territory now.
Yeah, it's special to see guys stay loyal to the team that gave them a chance and turned them into the player that he is today. Like, without the developmental staff of the Bucks, Giannis would not be where he is today. So I know he owes a lot of them really all of his success. Obviously, he put in all the work, but they were there with him every step of the way. So it's nice to see guys be rewarded for that loyalty with, max contracts. And I would like the Bucks to reward Giannis with maybe another competent star. I really thought that Miles Turner would be a better player for the Bucks than he's been this year. He's been a little disappointing in my opinion. And the Dame experiment obviously failed in the last couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see where the Bucks go from here. You have that franchise piece that all 30 teams look for. You have Giannis. How do you build around him and win a second championship with him is something that they will have to, grasp. So it's nice to hear that Giannis is staying put, and this is good news for Milwaukee. However, I don't know if that helps them very much for the remainder of this particular season.
No, but the report also following Giannis remaining committed to Milwaukee, that they're expected to be buyers instead of sellers at the trade deadline. So Milwaukee's going to be, as you said, looking to acquire talent surrounding Giannis. The issue is with what assets? Because Milwaukee has nothing desirable by other teams other than Giannis himself. They don't control any of their first-round picks until 2031, and I think it's about time Milwaukee has learned their lesson to stop trading first-round picks for mediocre veterans after trading away last year's for Kyle Kuzma, who has sucked. Also, Miles Turner, as you mentioned, has been much more than a little disappointing. He has been a lot disappointing after getting a max contract this offseason. So I don't know how the Bucks could even go to acquire another star, even if one were to say he wants to go to Milwaukee. They don't have cap space. They don't have draft picks. They don't have other desirable players on good contracts that other teams would want. It is a complete mess in Milwaukee. I'm honestly shocked that Giannis wants to stay. The only reason he is because he's a loyal player, and shout out Giannis. That's my GOAT. But yeah, Milwaukee's future is looking very poor, and it's going to be seemingly up to Giannis to carry the team year in and year out.
Yeah, until they either draft a great player to go with him or trade for someone or sign somebody in free agency. I agree. It's Giannis
Yeah,
is
but
gonna.
all their picks belong with New Orleans, the Pelicans, after trading them for Drew Holiday. The
Mm,
Pelicans control the Bucks picks with either pick swaps or outright own them until like 2029, and then 2030 went to the Wizards for Kuzma. Like they don't have any draft picks or young players that can. Ryan Rollins is their best young player. He's not as good as he is. I don't think Rollins will ever be an all-star at this point in his career. They don't have any like that's what I mean. The Bucks' future is so bleak. It is Giannis and Giannis only. And now Milwaukee just makes him the centerpiece, the focal point of their franchise as his career winds down. Give the legend the recognition he deserves.
yeah, absolutely agree. Let's transition now into some games that have been taking place in the last couple days that have been absolutely electric. Buzzer beaters everywhere. I know Alex put together a list of guys that he'll read in just a minute, but my take on this is that the NBA, as we kind of get into the middle part of the year, games become more competitive. One, because teams are getting more even, and also they're used to playing against each other. They know what to expect, and blowouts are not happening as much, which is great for the league. I think there's a lot of teams right now contending, and there's a couple teams that I think have separated themselves, but a lot of teams that still can win a playoff round, maybe two rounds, and get to a conference finals, which is amazing. I feel like at the beginning of the year when we did our predictions, we thought it would be very top heavy, but I think it's the complete opposite right now, and the standings are absolutely just jumbled up with 6 or 7 teams in each conference that could absolutely reach the conference finals, in my opinion. So, with that being said, let's talk about some of these games, starting with a controversial buzzer beater from Paolo Banchero last night. I feel like we should start there because apparently I wasn't watching the game, but Alex informed me that he hit a game-winning three that should have been a two. Alex, what did you see on that play, and is this something that the NBA should make reviewable in the future?
Yeah, well, first of all, I thought this was something that was reviewable. I mean, Kevin Durant's famous three-pointer that was then reversed to a two in Game 7 was reviewed. It was initially called a three and then changed to a two. So I thought this was something that was reviewable. But to get to the actual game itself, the Magic were playing the Brooklyn Nets, and Yegor Dedham actually hit two clutch shots. The first one in regulation, a three-pointer to send the game to overtime, and then the second one to take the lead in overtime. A 2-point lead with just under 5 seconds remaining. Paulo then hit his buzzer beater three, which gave Orlando the win. But, I mean, I didn't watch the game. I only saw replays and highlights of Banchero's buzzer beater. But to me, it looked pretty clear that Banchero's toe was on the 3-point line. I mean, it didn't look very disputable. It looked pretty obvious. So it should have made that a 2-pointer and sent the game to double overtime rather than being a game winner. So, very controversial decision to award Paulo the three. Nonetheless, an incredible shot by Paulo Banchero to give the Magic. It ended up being the game winner. It was a tough 3-pointer. It was a step back, fading away, a buzzer beater, game on the line. So I give Paulo all credit, but I don't think it should have officially been a game winner. I think it should have been a game tying shot, sending the game to double overtime. Interesting to see if there's any fallout from that in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, if Brooklyn had a challenge, I feel like that's definitely a challengeable play, even though it's the last play of the game. Like, you can still, at that point when he took the shot, the game was still happening, so I feel like you should be able to challenge that. So I'm interested to see either if they use their challenge earlier in the game or if
coaches can't challenge in the last 2 minutes of the second or fourth quarters. All replay reviews are initiated by the NBA headquarters.
Is that a new rule this year? Because I feel like last year a lot of challenges happened within like the last 30 seconds of a game. Like coaches would save it for that exact moment.
That's a new. It was. They changed it like the NFL rules, where you can't challenge in the last 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarters.
Yeah,
they changed all replay reviews are initiated by the league headquarters.
Yeah, I think they should change that back after something like tonight, or last night, excuse me.
But my question is, how does the league headquarters not initiate a review on this play, on a game-winning play? Why did the referees not look at this and realize, oh, his foot's on the line? Let's go 5 more minutes. Like, it should have. it should not have been a difficult decision.
Yeah.
And I do expect there to be some fallout and maybe a league announcement this evening saying that Banchero's foot was officially on the line and the referees made a mistake.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's all they do.
Yeah, I mean, they can say that, but it's still not going to change the outcome of the game. That would be unfair.
Exactly.
And yeah, I don't want to go on a rant on NBA officials, but when I watch a lot of professional sports, whether it be hockey or football or basketball or even college basketball. NBA officials, not even basketball, NBA officials are by far and away the worst set of officials in any sport, in my opinion. I know NFL officials get their flack. I know college basketball sometimes. But just the NBA, the amount of atrocious calls and their inability to take criticism from the players while the game is going on is just so infuriating to watch. Like, and I don't want to go on a rant about officials because I have a lot of problems with the NBA officiating, but something like this that genuinely decides the outcome of a game should never happen at this level of basketball. Never. And with all the cameras you have in that building, with all the replay available to you, and you have implemented in the last couple of years a challenge rule. Why are you taking that away from coaches in the last 2 minutes of each half? That to me is also dumb. If a coach wants to challenge it, let him challenge it. I've never really understood that in the NFL either, but anyway, that's my little mini rant on the refs. I'm not surprised that they got it wrong because NBA refs get a lot of stuff wrong, and it's sad that a great game like that...
I'm not surprised they got it wrong.
I'm not. Like, they get stuff wrong all the time, and I'm not... And again, I'm not expecting them to be perfect, but the amount of stuff they get stuff wrong in the NBA, to me, just seems egregious. And then when they are wrong and players call them out on it, they just get mad and defensive and an instant tech or an ejection, and that ruins it for fans.
And then the players end up getting fined. Yeah,
and then that ruins the money they're being able to feed their families with. It ruins the experience for the fans that literally paid money to the NBA to sit there and watch the game, all because Baldy Locks over there couldn't take a joke. Not even a joke. He couldn't take a little bit of criticism from guys that literally do this for a living. So, again, that's my mini rant. And yeah, let's move on to a different game that wasn't so controversial.
Hey, you know what? That was a valid tirade, valid crash out. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I do think the NBA officiating, something needs to change about that because it has been a mess for years. But Dedmon and Banchero were not the only two players with clutch performances in just yesterday's slate of action, because 3 other players hit clutch shots under 5 seconds to either tie the game or give their teams the lead. Starting with LaMelo Ball, who hit a layup to give the Hornets lead against the Raptors, only for Emmanuel Quickly to hit a buzzer-beating three-pointer and give the Raptors to win. And by the way, if you haven't seen the highlight for that game, the call for it was incredible. Eric Collins, the commentator for the Hornets, does an incredible job every game, and that specific call was hilarious. So I highly recommend watching that just for the commentating, if you haven't yet. In addition to those two players, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hit a game-tying mid-range jumper at the buzzer to send the game to overtime against the Utah Jazz, where the Thunder eventually would emerge victorious. And to close it all off, Tari Eason actually had what he thought was a game winner against the Portland Trail Blazers. But lo and behold, the NBA reviewed this game winner, and it actually was in his hands when the buzzer went off. So it was disallowed, and the Blazers ended up winning. Why the NBA reviewed that game winner and not Paulo's? Great question. But a lot of clutch performances from the NBA. We already talked about Paulo and Dedmon. Aside from those two, what are those 4 players or shots or moments stood out to you the most?
I would say Quickly for the Raptors, and the only reason I say that is because this was a game where Brandon Ingram got hurt in the first half, Scotty Barnes got hurt in the second half, and for a guy like Quickly to step up in that moment, if those two guys are healthy, I don't think he's the one taking that shot, to be perfectly honest with you. So the fact that he stepped up in that moment and was able to hit that shot, big time moment after, like you said, LaMelo came down and took the lead right before then. So I really commend quickly and the Raptors as a whole for sticking in there and getting that win without their two best players for most of that game. That's one that stood out to me. And my last little point about why they would review one and not the other. This is the type of conversations that conspiracy theorists have to say sports are rigged. Like, this is the type of stuff they look at and tell you that sports are rigged. And I'm not one of those people, but I'm just saying the people that argue that sports are rigged.
It gives them evidence,
Yes,
unnecessarily.
This is the type of stuff that happens, twice, maybe 3 times in a season that people point to and look and say, what the hell is this? Like, this is not, it's just not fair. And so, yes, it's astonishing how we had almost 2 identical instances of buzzer beaters where one was reviewed and reversed and one should have been reviewed and reversed but wasn't. And it's crazy that it happened in the same night. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like one was reviewing whether or not they got the shot at before the buzzer. And I don't know if that's reviewable or not in comparison to whether something was a 3 or a 2. But why is everything not reviewable?
Yes, thank you.
I don't understand why certain things have to be and certain things aren't. Like, they should just, like, if NBA officials got a call wrong and they're able to, like, they should be able to review it and make the change. There's nothing wrong with getting a call wrong. Do you know how hard it is to get every call correct in a game of life? Like,
impossible.
At the speed the players play at?
Impossible.
So there's nothing wrong with getting a call wrong in the moment as long as you're able to go back and correct it. And that is where the issues arise, because there have been numerous occasions over the last half decade of teams losing games strictly, and this isn't an excuse because of the officiating. Not the officiating made a bad call in the third quarter that slowed the momentum down. A game costing call by the referees. Numerous instances, and like you said, that should never happen in the NBA.
Yeah, no, not at this level. We pay, I don't even know what they pay the refs, but just like the players and the coaches, you are presumed to be the best of the best. And when I watch other sports, those officials are extremely delicate and inaccurate. And that combination together is not good. Not good at all. And I agree. Something needs to happen. Adam Silver, he's made a lot of good changes to the game, I think, in the last decade of trying to make it more enjoyable for the general public. But for the diehard fans that actually understand the game of basketball and want to watch like the best players play against each other and have it ruined by the people who are blowing whistles every possession, they're blowing a whistle, is annoying and extremely frustrating. So, yeah, that's my take.
This is supposed to be a discussion about the crunch time performances yesterday, and it turned into a discussion about the officials. See, they're ruining even this. It's terrible. Change the officiating. Something needs to be done. One more game that I want to mention that occurred in the last week happened on Monday of this week when the shorthanded Denver Nuggets beat the healthy Philadelphia 76ers. This was a huge win for the Nuggets, and on the topic of game winners, Bruce Brown hit a game-winning layup with about 3 seconds remaining. The Nuggets did not have a single player of their normal starting 5 in that game, and yet they managed to beat one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. Their leading scorers were Jalen Pickett and Peyton Watson, who have both stepped up majorly in the absence of Jokic, and then especially in that game against the Sixers with Murray was also out. Murray has had an incredible performance since Jokic has gone down to injury. Should be named a first-time All-Star this year, thankfully, because Jamal Murray has been, for about the last half-decade, probably the best player in the league to never make an All-Star game. That should change this year. He had a career-high 17 assists yesterday in the Nuggets win. I think they beat the Celtics, actually. So, again, that's another top-tier Eastern Conference team that the Nuggets beat without the MVP in Nikola Jokic. The role players for the Nuggets are stepping up and stepping up big time. We thought that Murray would show out, but the Nuggets would lose and lose a lot without Jokic. They have a winning record in the 5 games he's gone down. And yes, it's a small slate. It's only 5 games. But with 2 of those games being against top teams in the Eastern Conference, I expect this level of play from the Nuggets to continue.
Yeah, I mean, this is best case scenario a week after the Jokic injury. I think this is best case scenario for all of us, you and myself included, that picked Denver to win the championship. I know I picked Jokic and Adelman to win Coach of the Year and MVP. this year. Jamal Murray's all-star case. Like all of this last 5-game stretch is best case scenario for all parties involved.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I think a lot of people aren't thinking about, it allows Denver to be really smart about Jokic. They do not have to rush him back now because they know that the team can at least hold it down for a couple extra games to ensure Jokic is 100% when he comes back. So I am very impressed with Denver. I think they are finding something, like they are learning about themselves and how to play without Jokic. It is extremely fascinating. And once they're not only missing Jokic, like Aaron Gordon is still coming off the bench. He's not playing his full load yet. Christian Brown just came back from injury. Cam Johnson's been out for the last week or so as well. Jamal Murray missed that game you mentioned against Philadelphia. Like they are missing more than just Jokic and still finding ways to win on the road against good teams. So I'm extremely encouraged by Denver, and I think that Jokic, I mean, he's only going to miss, 10 more games probably? He was only projected to be out a month.
Give or take, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, he's in the last 5 games with a winning record. They've got 10 games just about without him left. Like I said, I was going to say if they went 500, I'd be impressed. They have more than impressed me with the caliber of wins they have on their resume without Jokic this year.
Yeah, shout out Jalen Pickett, Penn State alum who has really stepped up, turned us into a basketball school in 2021. That was an elite time to be at Penn State. Shout out Pickett, balling with the Nuggets now. The MVP race, speaking about Jokic, has changed significantly since his injury, along with the injuries of other top contenders, and the sportsbook has reflected that. I know Max has come with reflected odds of the MVP voting, which looks very different than it did 3 months ago in the preseason. So, Max, why don't you read off the odds and tell us what the charts are looking like?
Yeah, of course. So I wanted to do this for more than just the MVP, but most of the other awards haven't changed as much as the MVP has. So I wanted to just solely focus on the MVP. So while I have the names written down, I did not write down the odds. So let me get those real quick. But Alex, do you have any guesses as to who maybe entered the top 5 or who has left the top 5 since the last time we looked at these odds?
Okay, well, I'm going to guess the 3 injury-concerned players, Wemby, Jokic, and Giannis, have all left due to the likelihood of them being ineligible for the awards, not because of diminished quality of play or anything of that sort, just because of the injury rule. I'm going to assume Shea is number 1, and Luka has missed 10 games, but I think he would still be in the top 5 because that's 7 games is still a good amount of games you can miss. That's 3 weeks of NBA play that Luka would have to miss to be ineligible. So along with Shea and Luka, I'm gonna guess the other 3 are Cade Cunningham, Jaylen Brown, and I think Jalen Brunson. Yeah, those are gonna be my final guesses.
Wow, I am shocked. You just went 5 for 5, and you listed them in order. Like, you just listed them in order down the list.
Wow.
Oh, my.
That's what we love to see.
All right, so according to the odds, Shea right now is minus 400. He's the runaway favorite at this point in the season to win the MVP, based on, obviously, injuries and his phenomenal play on the court. Luka is second at plus 500, so not too bad, but again, a little bit of a longer shot. Then Cade at third is plus 2,500. So there's a huge drop off between the top 2 and everybody and everybody else. Jaylen Brown is right behind Cade at plus 3,500, and then there's another drop. Brunson at plus 600, and then to round out the top 10,
6,000. I'm guessing you mean?
Yeah, 6,000. Sorry, yep, plus 6,000.
Okay, yeah.
And then to round out the top 10 is Maxey, Ant, KD, Donovan Mitchell, and Steph. So, like you said, those 3 guys that have missed a lot of games aren't even in the top 10, which is a shame. Mm-hmm. But, again, it's a necessary evil, I think, to make sure we're not giving awards to players who miss a significant amount of games. So, I am shocked that you just guessed all 5 of those right. I thought for sure you would not think Jalen Brunson was in the top 5. I thought you would maybe put together the top 4. But
I was trying to think of teams in the West, but because I named the top 2 in the East with Cunningham and Brown, but I already named Shea. Jokic is out. Wemby's not going to be in contention. So I mean, there was no one really in the West that stood out, and fell back down to either
Yeah.
Tyrese Maxey or Brunson. And I think Brunson has been having a much better year than Maxey.
Yeah, and while we're here, the runaway favorite for Rookie of the Year is still Cooper Flag at -700. That hasn't really changed. Um, Most improved
Okay,
player.
these are odds I want to see because the rookie class has been stacked this year. I want to know where Trae Johnson is because Trae Johnson is a shooter with the Wizards, dude.
He
We've been talking about the Wizards this episode. Trae Johnson has been balling the last week or two. He has unlimited range. He's fun to watch. Keep an eye on Trae Johnson with
he's
Trae Young.
currently tied with the 8th best odds with Igor Demon. He's still behind Flag, Knipple, VJ, Derek Queen, Fears, Cedric Coward, and Dylan Harper. So he's still
I'm
behind.
surprised Derek Queen is that low, and I'm surprised Jeremiah Fears is that high. Everything else seems about right. Cedric Coward seems a bit underrated in this list as well. But
Yeah.
I mean, why would you bet? I'm not going to bet on Cedric Coward to get to win the Rookie of the Year because it's going to be Flag most likely.
Yeah, it's.
I just think Coward's odds should be a bit higher.
I agree. It's very similar to the MVP with Flag at -700, Knipple at +500, and then the pack after that. So it's going to be one of the Duke boys taking home the award, it appears, which much deserved. I think they've been far and away the best 2 rookies this year, so much deserved there.
Agreed.
Most improved player.
They've been among the best 2 rookies of the last 5 years. The two have had incredible rookie years, even in comparison to the last 5 draft classes. So I think Knipple would have won Rookie of the Year in 4 of the last 5 NBA draft classes besides Wemby's year. But Knipple's had a year, and it's taken a generational talent like Flag to usurp him for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. Just looking at these awards, for most improved player, Jalen Johnson is sitting at +220. He is not the favorite for most improved. I feel like now that they have officially moved on from Trae Young, that might be worth sprinkling a little money on because I think he's only going to get. I mean, he's now the clear-cut number 1 for the 2/3 of the season here. And the favorite is Denny Avdia, who I don't see. I don't know. I think Jalen Johnson could argue he's more improved than Avdia. I don't know.
I would argue that, and both are expected to make their first All-Star appearance this year. But I think Jalen Johnson, he also kind of had this ascent last season. We kind of knew going into this year that Jalen Johnson was going to be this good of a player. The only reason that he didn't make an All-Star appearance and was not in contention for MIP last year was because he suffered an injury 30 games into the season that cut his year short. But Jalen Johnson's breakout is not as much of a surprise as Avdia's, I will say. Avdia broke out after All-Star Weekend last year and has continued that elite level of play. Although his foul baiting is among the worst in the league. It's borderline unwatchable. But he just put up a career high in points yesterday in their win against the Rockets. He either finished with 41 or 43. I cannot remember because I'm dumb. But one of those numbers Avdia finished with as a career high. And both of them would be deserving players. If I were to award it right now, I think I would give it to Avdia. Just because he's a bit more of a surprise than Jalen Johnson in terms of first-time All-Stars.
Yeah, absolutely. But betting in most parts is about predicting what's going to happen, and I feel like they're on kind of they're on a level playing field. So getting one guy at +220 while the other one's at -160 seems like the betting move would be on Jalen Johnson.
Agreed. And Jalen Johnson's role should, like you said, should only increase now that Trae Young is out. So yeah, get him now while he's the second favorite, and because his odds are only going to get I don't know betting terms, but they're going to get smaller or bigger. They're going to get closer to the minuses as the season goes on and Jalen Johnson's role increases.
Yeah, that would be smaller. The odds would get smaller in that case.
Okay. I don't know betting terms. My bad.
Yeah, last piece of betting news that I wanted to talk about, and this is more just a shout out. Right now, there's a guy named Anthony Black at +800 to win 6th Man of the Year. He has been absolutely balling for Orlando ever since Franz Wagner got hurt. He has been balling, and he has been, on some nights, their best player. I genuinely think that at +800, that could be a steal. With Naz Reid is currently the favorite at +350. If Anthony Black keeps this up, I think he definitely is going to establish himself as a top 3 candidate for 6th Man of the Year. What do you think about that?
Sixth Man of the Year is not really an award I follow that much, but I do know Anthony Black has broken out this year. I know a few weeks ago he had a 39-point game in the starting lineup, which was his career high. The former sixth overall pick, so he has a high pedigree. His first couple of years in the league were slow, but he has fully broken out this year with the Magic. Looks like a much improved player than early in his career. And on the topic of most improved player voting, don't be surprised to see Anthony Black's name maybe creep into the top 5 of odds if he keeps up this level of play. Speaking in terms of Sixth Man of the Year candidacy, I know he started a lot of games. I don't know how many games he has to start before he'd be ineligible for the Best Bench Player award, but I mean, I don't have any reason to say Black won't win it. Naz Reid has already won it. I don't know the last time there's been a 2-time Sixth Man of the Year, so it'll be interesting to see if Naz Reid can secure that. But I don't have much to say about the Best Bench Player award.
The only guy I can think of that won multiple would have been Lou Williams, but I don't know if he won multiple six.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I know Jamal Crawford did in his heyday.
Yeah,
but that's the most recent. I don't know if Lou did or didn't officially.
Anyway, my betting mind is telling me Anthony Black's good value because he's currently behind Keldon Johnson on the Spurs, Jaime Jaquez on the Heat, and Naz Reid. So he's currently 4th in odds. I feel like in the last 2 weeks he's been playing just as good, if not better, than those 3 guys. So hopefully he keeps that up and you see his odds creep towards the top. But that's all I had from a betting perspective on the awards.
Yeah. I don't bet. I don't sports gamble. But for those of you that do, I would consider that to be solid advice. Take Anthony Black while he's got value.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, betting is hard. So Anthony Black could get hurt tomorrow and you would have no chance. So again, betting is so hard. So only bet what you can lose.
So
that would be my advice.
Don't do it if you don't.
Yeah.
If you don't start.
Yeah. But all right.
Keep your vices strong. All right. Can move on to our last segment of the episode now. We haven't done a blind ranking in a while, so we decided to return to our roots and pull one of those out. Max has brought a list of NBA trades we have seen, and he hasn't given me a criteria. He asked me to pick the criteria for this list. So I have decided to blind rank these trades based on the seismic impact they had in the NBA at the time of the trade. So I'm not grading the trade. I'm not judging to see how it aged. I am considering in the moment that the trade was made, how big was it? How much breaking news was it? How much of the landscape did it change in the NBA? That is my criteria.
Yeah, so, and all 5 of these trades took place within the last 10 NBA seasons. Okay. So that is the one hint I will give you. So all recently since, I know you've been watching the NBA for all of these trades. So nothing that you weren't around the league, or you weren't not around the league, when these trades took place. So you'll know the impact they have. So first up, we have the Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green for DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a first-round pick between the Spurs and Raptors in 2018.
In terms of short-term impact, this is about as big as it gets because Kawhi immediately helped Toronto win the championship that year. So that is a trade that immediately made seismic waves and immediately paid dividends for the Raptors. Kawhi was viewed as one of the best players, if not the best player in the league before being traded to the Raptors, and only further cemented that status in his 1 year before leaving on free agent to the Clippers. Another Kawhi Leonard trade saga was a huge deal. His last season with the Spurs after that Zaza Pachulia incident in the playoffs was tumultuous and controversial and filled with off-the-court headlines. So the Kawhi Leonard news surrounding his trade was big leading up to it. The day of the trade was big. And his time with the Raptors was also seismic for the NBA. I do predict that you're going to have one other trade on here that is bigger than the Kawhi Leonard trade. And if you don't have this trade, I'm going to regret not putting Kawhi at 1. But officially, Kawhi to the Raptors is going at 2.
All right, Kawhi to the Raptors slotted in at 2. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but we're only doing 5 trades. It's hard to find 10 kind of evenly matched trades for him to rank. So
5 is fair. 5 is good. No problem with that.
Just wanted to make that known. All right, next up, we have a blockbuster trade that I think a lot of people forget about, and that is when Anthony Davis was traded to the Lakers from the Pelicans for Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, 3 first-round picks, and cash to the Pelicans, and then the Wizards were also involved, but they didn't get a lot of meaningful stuff. This was basically a Lakers young core. We're giving that all away for Anthony Davis. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on this trade?
And, funnily enough, the Lakers traded for Anthony Davis. They acquired it from the Pelicans. The Pelicans then got the first overall pick in the 2019 draft when they took Zion Williamson. Flash forward 6 years into a trade that may or may not be on this list when the Lakers acquired another generational superstar, and then Dallas got the first overall pick. So the ties between two of these trades seem to be quite prominent. In terms of impact, Davis also won a ring with the Lakers. I don't know if his exit with the Pelicans was as dramatic or as newsworthy as Kawhi's was with the Spurs. So that's the only reason I'm going to slot it at 3. You could very well make a case for the 2 to flip-flop because the Lakers are a much bigger market team than the Raptors are. But I think just in terms of the trade itself, the player departing from the team and arriving to the team, I think Kawhi's was a little bit more newsworthy than Anthony Davis's.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the AD trade. I think this one took place before the Kawhi trade or after. Or was it the same season?
No, this was after because Kawhi won the championship in 2019. That offseason, he went to the Clippers. That offseason was when Anthony Davis joined the Lakers. The Lakers missed the playoffs straight up in 2019 and LeBron's first year with the team.
Yep, gotcha. All right, so next up, Alex has the 1-4-5 remaining. So next up, this trade is absolutely insane when I read it out loud. Paul George to the Clippers for SGA and 7, count them,
you got
7 first-round picks. 7 first-round picks. And SGA and Gallinari. Sorry, forgot about Gallinari. Can't forget about him. For Paul George. Just for Paul George. That's what the Clippers gave up to get Paul George.
I did not know all these trades were going to be blockbusters. I would have ranked this at 5. Here is my logic behind that.
Oh my!
At the time the Clippers made that trade for Paul George, the biggest story was not that they signed Paul George or they traded for Paul George, was that they did it so that they could sign Kawhi Leonard in free agency. The headline, the crown jewel of all that was, it became Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because he became an MVP and a Finals MVP and a champion. But at the time of the trade, the crown jewel of that entire move was Kawhi, a player not even involved in the trade. That was the headliner. Yes, Paul George was a big acquisition, a headliner, but Kawhi said to the Clippers, get Paul George and I will sign with you. They did, and he did. That was the headliner. And so the trade itself, I'm not saying is, comparison to the other trades that we've named, it does not have the same newsworthiness because it was only half of the story, if that makes sense. In terms of the impact it had on the NBA, that trade literally built the Thunder's dynasty. It had arguably the biggest long-term impact among the trades that we've listed. But I'm ranking these trades on newsworthiness and with a little bit of short-term consideration, but mostly on the newsworthiness of the moment. And for that reason, I'm putting it at 5.
Based on your criteria, I completely agree where you've ranked them compared to the first 2 trades. But just thinking to ourselves that today the Thunder still have the Clippers' first-round pick. And they won a championship with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as the cornerstone of the franchise before the Clippers ever even reached the finals with Kawhi and Paul George and Russell Westbrook and James Harden and whatever combination of superstars they had during that time. That is crazy to think about how just amazing that trade was for Oklahoma City. Insane.
Completely agree. Like I said, if I was ranking this on long term, in terms of what this did for the NBA long term, that trade would be undisputedly number 1 because it has shaped the past 3 years of the league and it will shape the next 10 years of the league, if not more. It has the Clippers have basically said, here you go, Oklahoma City. Here's an MVP and a dynasty worth of young players that you can draft for Paul George, which in hindsight did not pay off for the Clippers at all because they did not win a championship. So
7 first-round picks in one trade is absolutely diabolical.
Absurd. Absurd.
Diabolical. All right, so Alex now has 1 and 4 left with 2 trades remaining. Next up, we have Kyrie Irving being traded to Boston in return for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Zizic, a first and a second-round pick going back to Cleveland.
Okay, I'm actually very happy putting this at 4. I think if you were to give me these 5 trades, I think I would slot this at 4 by itself in terms of newsworthiness. Kyrie didn't have as much of an impact at Boston. He didn't win a ring with the franchise as Leonard did with the Raptors and Davis did with the Lakers. But the Kyrie Leonard saga, when he requested a trade out of Cleveland, was still very noteworthy. Kyrie wanted to lead his own team rather than play second fiddle to LeBron. And that was why he requested out at the end of the day. It was definitely a big story when somebody openly says they don't want to play with LeBron James. Even though it didn't have anything to do with LeBron. It wanted Kyrie wanting to establish himself as an all-time great. I don't see anything wrong with that. But it still made news. It was still newsworthy in the NBA, both before he was traded and who he was traded to. Boston, who was a contender in the East after signing Gordon Hayward, drafting Jaylen Brown that year, and then going on to draft Jason Tatum. So Boston, that offseason was an absolutely huge one for both that current iteration and the future of the Celtics. So I'm very happy putting it at 4 above Paul George to the Clippers and below the other 2. What I will say is this last one needs to be Luka to the Lakers, or this list is fucked. This list will be screwed if it's not.
All right, so Alex, you want to give yourself a drum roll, maybe? A little drum roll? All right. Alex has played this to perfection because how could you have a blind ranking of the trades without the biggest trade of the last 20 years?
Okay.
Rounding out the list.
20 all time.
Yeah, there's probably some trades that we have never even heard of that you just think are absurd, but this is as bad as it gets from the Mavs. Luka going to the Lakers, Anthony Davis to Dallas, and obviously Dallas getting extremely lucky and landing Cooper Flag as a result.
But that wasn't even part of the trade. They didn't land Cooper Flag because they traded away Luka Doncic.
A lot of it was karma with, again, like similar.
Okay,
like
karma. The league is rigged. Okay,
like the Pelicans getting Zion was not part of the trade, but you mentioned that as part of your analysis. So it's the same situation.
Yeah.
In theory.
It is. But it is, and I'm bringing this at 1. But it's just like people say, "Oh, the trade for Luka might be worth it because they got Cooper Flag." The Mavericks did not get Cooper Flag because they traded Luka.
Yeah.
They were bad enough after trading Luka to end up in the lottery where they miraculously got Cooper Flag. That had nothing to do with Luka Doncic. It was not Cooper Flag was not involved in the draft. And I hear people on I see people on social media trying to justify the trade, saying after like a Cooper big game, saying, "Oh, maybe it was worth it to trade Luka," but he had nothing to do with the Luka trade. So I just need to point that out to show how badly the Mavericks and Nico Harrison got fleeced. Worst general manager move of all time. Except for maybe the Nets trading their entire future for like 3 38-year-olds. I remember that was pretty bad too in 2012.
Yeah, again,
aside from that this Luka trade is up there.
Recency bias is definitely a factor in this one, but it's like top 3 worst trades of all time, no doubt, from the Mavericks' perspective, obviously. I consider
in terms of newsworthiness, I definitely think it's number 1 on this list.
Oh, I agree.
Just in terms of the unexpectedness and the shock it brought.
Oh, 100%. It was crazy. And I thought about including the Trae Young trade in here, but I thought it would be hard for you to compare a trade that just happened to trades that have literally had years to develop and look back on.
It would have been ranked 6th. It would have been ranked the bottom out of these 6 anyways.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think
there's
players,
zero justification I could have for ranking it above any of these.
Yeah.
These are all blockbuster, huge trades in NBA history. And Trae Young is more along the lines of Blake Griffin to the Pistons.
Wow. Okay, that's disrespectful. But
I think that's accurate. What's wrong
I
with that? Pistons Blake Griffin was elite his first year.
he
That
was,
was his
but
best year ever.
I feel like Blake, when he was traded, he was a little bit past his prime. I still feel like Trae Young is in his prime. I don't know.
I feel like I could argue Trey's a little bit past his prime. He's on the older side. I mean, I think you could argue his prime was his third year in the NBA when he made it to the Eastern Conference Finals because he hasn't even gone out of the first round since then. So
yeah, I would say that he could still reach his prime though because of how bad he is on defense. Like if he just showed a little bit of improvement, I would consider this his prime.
Agreed. Agreed. Good point there. Good point there. You have as long as he's only awful at defense and not absolute dog shit.
Not the worst
Trae
defender in the
in his
league.
prime.
Yeah, if he's not the worst defender in the league, he'll be considered still in his prime. I think that's the criteria we're going to go by.
Okay. All right, I'll give you that. But that'll wrap up this episode of the Hoopers Lounge podcast. We hope you enjoyed our trade recaps, our award reviews, and our analysis of all the exciting NBA games that went on yesterday. We're now in January, nearly a month through with the NBA, or nearly halfway through the NBA regular season at this point. Crazy to think it's already gone by this fast. We're approaching All-Star break. We're approaching playoff conversations beginning. And, things are only going to get more exciting from here on out. Stay tuned for more news. Peace out, guys.
Peace out, y'all.